Boundless Authenticity podcast, where we discuss everything related to the evolution of human consciousness. All right, so I gotta tell you guys a secret. I am so fascinated by the phenomenon of fertility and the role that energetics plays in the whole thing. You guys already would have heard me talk with hypno-fertility pioneer Lindsay Eastburn, and if you haven't, definitely check out that episode. But I have the absolute honor of bringing to you for the very first time Fertility Shaman Cindy Jurado. Shaman Cindy comes from a long line of indigenous healers who realized her path through a series of supernatural encounters which happened after receiving healing from indigenous elders. You can find Cindy's book, Igniting Within, a hands-on healer's tips for awakening to your highest self, on Amazon. You can find her website, soulsanctuaryblessing.com, or follow Fertility Shaman on Instagram. Let's get into the discussion. P.S. Cindy will be back for a second part. Cindy, how's it going?
Good. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad to have you. Go ahead and tell everybody who you are.
Well, I'm known as Fertility Shaman Cindy on Instagram. Aside from that, I'm a modern day shaman, aka medicine woman. Some will call me a trans medium energy alchemist, to psychic surgeon, to sorcerer, you name it. But I'm a fertility whisperer, and I'm also a hairstylist and a doula on the side. So I've got quite a bit of things happening and going on here. But I do add value, and I help preserve lives who appreciate themselves. So that's basically it.
Awesome. So go ahead and tell me what all of that entails. I mean, you're the fertility shaman. What does this mean?
I know, it's quite interesting. Where to begin? So being a fertility shaman, I'm actually, I really focus on shamanic sessions. And then there's aside from that is fertility sessions. And then I also deal with womb blessings, crown chakra blessings. And it entails some medical healings on the side too. So we can get to that in a bit. But what happens is I have a spirit council that consists on a variety of people behind the scenes per se. So I deal with Christ consciousness. I have spirit doctors, even surgeons behind the scenes. My ancestors, their spirit animals, Jesus, Mary, and then Mother Mary. Even Buddha comes through. So I find that when I do these sessions, it's almost like they cater to the client's belief systems. So, for instance, if they are, Catholic, they're more, drawn to Jesus or God, right? And then you have the clients who are Buddhists, and then they see Buddha, in the spirit realm as, I'm doing the healings on them kind of thing. So that's where it all begins, really. And that each session is almost like my spirit council meets them on a spiritual level. And it's almost like, I don't know, it's like this unity, right? Like we have these sacred beings who actually meet them where they're at in their journey. And it's beautiful. It's a wonderful feeling and a sensation when you're actually in the moment. But yeah, so moving on to a much deeper level is that I find myself battling with, you'd say battle because I feel like it's almost like demons, if you will. So now we're getting to the dark side, and I don't want to scare anybody. I just want to make sure that the awareness is there. I'm not sure.
Go for it. This is a very scary podcast. Go for it.
Okay. So it's almost like I deal with underworld forces, dark forces. And I guess as shamans, that's what we do. But when I first had my awakening back in 2014, I remember having this lady who came in, and she was, suffering from, childhood sexual abuse to to even like suicidal thoughts. And she became very numb, and she had no emotions that were attached to any, like it was almost like she was just a walking soulless person. And to put into words, it's unrecognizable, right? Like you for somebody who doesn't know about, the underworld spirits and what they do and things like that. So, they basically, she came in and, it's almost like, night and day, basically. So they come in, they're numb. They're at this point where they don't have anyone to turn to. Western medicine doesn't help. And so, through word of mouth, they end up coming here, and I can tell almost immediately, and I can feel, and I get sensations, and I get awareness, I get visions of warnings. And when they come, I can see it on them, actually vibrating on them. And I know that there is a soul retrieval that is needed, as well as releasing these beings that they're unaware of. Okay. So what we do as shamans is that we go in and we remove the dark spirits for them because they're not aware of it. Right. And so they come in with these blockages, and when we go in, we're going in and we're looking at the emotional state, the mental state, their spiritual body as a whole, and then where they're coming from. And a lot of them are suffering from PTSD, trauma, like I was saying, sexual abuse, suicidal thoughts, depression, addictions, sleep paralysis is a huge one, and experiencing any paranormal activities. So this is where we go in and we do the soul retrieval. And when I first saw, like my third eye actually basically opened up and I could see beyond the veil, and holy man, I literally saw a black cloud remove, like detach from the back. So as shamans, we can see and we know that any of these attachments always come off the back. And so I literally had to go and I swept off her back, and I can just see this big cloud that formulated into the room, and it formulated a hand, and it really went for my neck. I freaked out. I grabbed my sage. I had to take this one out. I grabbed my sage and I was like, holy man. And I'm literally taking my feather, and I'm like, get out of here. I didn't know what to do because it was my first time. So I was like, oh my Lord. But lucky I had a crystal grid in the wall, because that's what really sucked, them in, right? So I was like, oh my God. And the whole time my client is laying there like not knowing what the heck is happening. You know what I mean? So for us as shamans, and we feel it. Like I was saying, that when within the 24 hours, I literally, I need to recuperate. So I need to recharge my energy, I find, and then my body's aching as if I was in a battle. It's quite interesting. But anyway, that's what we go through as shamans.
That is,
okay.
That is interesting, because I am not certain how many of the audience would have heard this before, but people tend to think, and especially with the westernization of the chakra system, they think of just these things being at the front, but they have a component at the back. And even in my own work with working with people who come for counseling, or they want their subconscious programs changed or something, they have this numbness to them, this soullessness. It's like there's nothing happening behind the eyes, and they feel lost, they feel stuck, they're depressed, or they have anxiety. And something is pushing, it appears like something's pushing aspects of their soul out of the body and stuck to them from the back, right? So what you're saying is, it's not something this is where I'm going with it. It's not something that's just common to shamanism. This is happening in a lot of people's lives, and it's happening so often these days that something interesting happened. It's one of the reasons, if you ever hear me harping on don't listen to music and stuff like that, there's a lot of entity attachments that come through the frequencies in some of this music. And I had 2 clients within the span of a year and a half that came to me with the same symptoms, were listening to the same music, and they were sketching the same entities. That was freaky. So that was crazy. That was in my early days of starting this, so many years ago. And I was like, oh, crap. So I totally understand where you're coming from with that. And how does something like that affect a person's level of fertility, though, is my question.
Okay. Yeah. So getting into the fertility. So that creates a blockage, definitely within the reproductive, but also it's the psyche too. We have to kind of explain that these entities really, they're like, how would you say? They're like energetic suckers, if you will. They're like leeches. And what they do is they attack the energetic field, and they know, it's almost like, okay, so sorry, let me backtrack. These entities are spirits that have crossed over. Let's explain that, right? Who have crossed over in maybe, they were shot, or it was like gang related. It was just, it was horrid, right? And so they are still lost in this realm. They're kind of like earthbound, if you will, but like literally just on a lower frequency. And so what they do is they look for people who are not, and this is what I always share with my healing or my clients, is that it's so important to follow a balanced routine. And that's protecting and shielding your energy first thing in the morning, setting intentions, and then going amongst your day, knowing that your spirit council is there to protect and shield you. And then at night you give thanks and, things like that. So, and then of course a cleansing, right? And it's so important to do that on a daily basis, because if not, there's these entities, like I was saying, roaming around looking for, vessels that are not protecting and shielding their energies. And so they go and they invade your space, they invade your aura field, because it's what expands 50 feet, something like that. And so they attach on to these frequencies because they see that you're going through, you're vibrating on their lower vibe, and, with depression or with alcohol or addiction, you name it, right? And so they latch on and they start to eat away at you. They literally get as close as they can to your soul, and then they take it away, basically causing discord, not only within you as a prey, but within your environment. So it's pretty interesting. You go to a concert, you go to a mall. Like, how many times do we go to a mall and we're feeling, like we're vibrating high, we're like, yay, and then you get into a mall, you do your shopping for an hour, so you come out and you feel just drained, right? You're feeling drained because you didn't shield it to protect your energy, and you didn't cleanse your space, your aura field. But yeah, so when it goes back to fertility, it's the same thing, right? Like, you're basically being attacked by these entities or energies. And everybody, when they come in, they're all in different levels. You can tell who's really deep into, the lower vibe energies. And then you've got, the ones that are not so bad because they're light workers, right? So they know what they're doing is to a certain point, but they just need a little boost. And so this is where, again, me as a fertility shaman comes in, and we basically just we connect them. We remove, for me, it's hard to explain because I allow spirit to do what they need to do. And I'm finding that when I'm laying hands, it's like, as soon as I get to the womb part, it's like they feel this instant physical shift within them, but also an energetic, shift. So yeah, I don't know how else to explain it. It's just, again, it's like they can feel, and another thing too, I noticed that when I'm doing the healing, they are going, so if there's any sort of resistance, that spirit feels, it's like they will go in and they'll put them into an altered state. So a trance state, if you will. And they, depending on where they're at, they'll fall asleep. You can hear them snoring. If they're snoring, they know that their body was tired, right? And there was excessive entities or attachments that were holding them down or back from their, blessings, if you will. And so, yeah, I just, I allow spirit to do their thing. And, when they're under, a lot of times they share that, they would feel something shift or move. And then not only that, but they got to meet their unborn baby. And so these unborn babies are called generation alphas. So basically, they're coming in with upgraded divine coding, and they're here. And from what I understand is that these are reincarnated babies that want to come through from the pandemic, through the war that's currently happening. They're coming through, they're getting recycled, if you will, because they want to. They wanted to continue, taking part in this great global shift. You know what I'm saying? Like to bring resolution to the global warming, for all the things that are in divine order. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Yeah.
It makes sense to me. I mean,
right?
Yeah, it makes sense to me. And talking about this kind of stuff can sound very convoluted and very complex to a lot of people who don't know yet. But I think you're doing a good job of explaining the general ideas of it. And so I have so many questions. I don't know which one to ask you first. Okay, so let's get maybe an idea of what your typical clientele looks like, and what do they come to you for most often?
Okay, so I have cancer patients that come. And this one's a huge one, because I find that in partnership with my spirit council, they have cited cysts and tumors, and then, helped remove or reduce or highlighted the size, resulting either in a cleansing surgery that was no longer required or greatly simplified, if you will. So up until this point, I've helped with breast cancer, fertility, plantar fasciitis, again, addictions and suicidal health, ailment preventions. So spirit, what happens is that spirit already knows when a client comes through. Like as soon as they book, it's almost like they honored their intuition, right? And spirit already was like, okay, organizing this behind the scenes, because already they know, what is it that they need. And so this is all avenues in their life, right? It's not just one thing that they think. So when we have a consent form, I have a consent form actually here, and there's a release of liability, just stating, that this is not a replacement of conventional Western medicine, and to continue on with their, prescriptions that the doctor, we work hand in hand. I feel this is our future as a healer, where we'll be working with doctors. But yeah, it's, I find on here as well is that we question, we ask them, what are your 3 set intentions? What are your wishes that you'd like to see to come to fruition? So this is where the manifesting, happens as well. And so they go ahead and they list 3 things, at least minimum, right? But in all actuality, again, spirit already knows. The spirit council is like, no, you know what? You have a childhood injury, and it may cause you to, it might come back because you're going to do something maybe when you're a bit older here. Let's go ahead and prevent that from happening. So they'll go in and they'll start to whatever they need to do. And then they're like, wait a minute. A lot of times, when they get up from the healing session, they're like, what the heck? That was my childhood injury. And I felt something shift, you know what I mean? And so I'm like, okay, good. That's really good. That's a good sign. And the same with my, cancer patient. I'll get a vision. Spirit will give me a vision and say, you know what, there's a warning here for this. And it's always something that's more complex, right? So then I'm like, oh, okay. So I'll contact them and I'll say, you know what, there's something going on. And then by then they'll realize that the universe is actually catering to them there and mirroring what it is that they're going through. For the one instance, the one lady, she said, you know, like the day that you contacted me, she said, I don't know, like I would turn on the TV and I'd see cancer. If I go to a waiting room, I can see a book and it'll say, you know, like cancer. The word cancer would pop up here and there, whatever. And then as soon as I contacted her, because I got the vision, she would be like, oh, okay, sure, I'll come in for a session. But by then, it was almost like as soon as we hung up on, the phone, she got the urge to check because she had this pain that instantly showed up. And sure enough, she contacted the doctor because she wasn't feeling that well, to be honest. And so she contacted the doctor called her in, and sure enough gave her the diagnosis that she has breast cancer. And that was why I got the vision. And they wanted to work on her. So I said, oh, okay. So she came in for the session, and that's when, I got to where the tumor was, and she just, like, her reaction was just like, and then I said, oh, sorry, I didn't even touch you, right? So are you okay? But by then, Spirit was already doing their thing, reducing what it needed to reduce. But she says, you know what? And I felt like this, oh, you got to change. There's something within you that has to change, right? And sure enough, as soon as she sat up from the session, she's like, I have to change. And I'm like, wow, such confirmation, right? Because how did she get cancer, right? So, of course, there's always, whenever there's health issues that arises, it's like Spirit's way of saying, you know what, this is karmic. This is where you went wrong, with the choice that you made, things like that, right?
I think that's a great distinction to make for people to really understand that when something is karmic, it's as a result of something that you've been doing. And I wonder how many people come to you and Spirit goes, oh, finally, you're listening,
Oh, yeah, they're like applauding them just as they sit on the healing bed. They're like, thank you for following your intuition. It's like pat on the back. But yeah, it's great. It's great. But she said, and she even I think she came for 3 sessions because, throughout the chemo, and she's like, the doctor was so amazed that the tumor reduced in size. And that her healing was just phenomenal. Like she should be puking, with all these, chemo and things like that. And she was not. She was like taking selfies and she was glowing. And I'm like, she's sending it to me. And I'm like, are you okay? I'm like, wow, you're so strong. You know what I mean? But it's a good feeling, right? It makes me feel like, okay, I need to do more. I feel now is the time to really share these stories, right? Because again, as you said, there's not many people out there that are aware of holistic and holistic healing, basically. And so, yeah, she says, I need to go through this process. And I'm like, oh, really? And I say, okay, you tell me what? And then she says, well, I need to go through this process because I need to know. I need to learn where I went wrong and how it's karmic. And at the end of the day, it was more of she was trying to get back revenge on someone. And so it backfired, just to give you an example. Yeah. And so she understood that. And now today she's doing so well. She has a new job and she's in a new relationship and she looks amazing. She's actually got implants and yeah, it's great. It's great. But yeah, that's cancer patients for you. Another one I'll share are 2 sisters that flew in from Seattle. This one, so the one sister, she had breast cancer, and the one that she actually contacted me, and I think she was in between jobs or something. So it was kind of like, okay, you know what, I'm gonna go and see you. And so anyway, as soon as they booked, her and her sister were in the kitchen in Seattle there with her mom, and they're like, "Do you smell this? Do you smell that?" And then. And the mom's like, no. And then the sister, so they're looking at each other like, do you smell that? They're like, yeah. yeah. And then, so what I said, she's like, it's incense, right? You smell incense. And the mom's like, don't know what you're talking about, but then they were like, oh, that's so cool. And they got enlightened because they knew that they just booked with myself, and that they're already, they bought their plane tickets, they're ready to come. And so as they were stopping off at the airport, they shared, there was, I think, 2 cancer patients. I think the one was on remission, and the other one, showed that she had cancer. But it was so weird that it happened at the 2 airports that they stopped over. And so that was another kind of synchronicity, I think, that was mirroring them at that point. And when they came, it was within 24 hours, my spirit guides, or my spirit council, what happens is that they prep them 24, 48 hours. They highlight what it is, or why they came here to do this healing session. And the one with cancer started vomiting. Any toxins from the body was being removed. And so that was interesting in itself. And then when she came into the room, we just started chit-chatting and just connecting and getting to know one another. And as soon as I said the words, expect, some shifts within your body, whether it be organs and that, and she starts going like this. And I'm like, oh, they're working on you already, eh? Again, they cleared the back, which lets you know those, darn underworld entities, so that was already removed. And I said, okay, they've already began. We didn't even start, but okay, all right. But anyway, they had session each, and the sister recovered. She's on remission. She's perfectly fine. Everything went well. And the other one that was trying to find work, apparently she found the one specific job that she wanted within that 24 hours, right in Seattle, in the heart of Seattle, next to her. So she was just so amazed, and again, grateful for the experience, because again, a lot of times we as humans like to complicate things, right? And, we like to itemize things, or we like to stay within our box, if you will. And I think this is, I think that, just healing in itself, holistic healing and all that, again, has to come into play.
I think that's, yeah, I think that's fantastic. So thanks for sharing those compelling stories. Cindy, where can people find you?
Soul Sanctuary Blessing, no S. Okay, so soulsanctuaryblessing.com, or it's Fertility Shaman Cindy on Instagram.
Fantastic. Cindy, thanks for being on the Boundless Authenticity podcast.
Yay! Thank you for having me.
Awesome.